day I discovered I was carrying Meka was actually the day after Thanksgiving. My doctor that I'd had since I was a teenager, I went for my regular exam and he says, I think you're pregnant. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I can't be pregnant. And he's like, yeah, I think you are. And he says, then just come back in a couple of weeks and we make it positive, make sure. But I was like, oh, I'm fine. I know I'm not pregnant, so I'm only late by a day or two, so I'm good. 2 weeks later, I went in. I took the pregnancy test, and back then, you had to wait a while. It's not like today. He called me and told me that I was pregnant. Well, he called me at work, and he asked if I had a close friend with me. And my best friend that I worked with was there. So I gave the phone to her, and he told her, and he said, I need you to be with her. And when she told me, well, she really didn't tell me right then. She just said, we're leaving. And she was actually my boss as well. She says, we're leaving. And I'm like, where are we going? And so she says, we got to go. Just come on, clock out, we're leaving. So we left and went to her house. And she told me then. I was devastated because there was no husband to tell. And I was too embarrassed to run and tell my mom. This, to me, was not joy. It was like a death sentence for me at that time. I was devastated. I just knew I wasn't pregnant, and I just knew the test was going to say negative. And when she told me that, I just cried for hours, I think. It was so horrible for me. It was one of the worst days I felt of my life at that time. I cried because I was ashamed. I was an unwed mother, and the father was actually married. So not only was I having a baby and not being married, but I was actually going to have a child from a married man. His reaction was pure joy, actually. In fact, I didn't even tell him. I only told one of my other friends, a classmate of mine, and she was sworn to secrecy, not to say a word. I decided that I was not going to have the child. I was going to have an abortion. So I went to the abortion clinic, and the plan was she was going to pick me up. Well, he was looking for me and couldn't find me. So he ended up calling my best friend. And when he called her, she told him everything. So he ended up, as I was getting ready to walk out of the car, get out of the car, he appeared and pleaded with me not to do it. That he was going to be the wonderful father and he was going to take care of this child. And he really didn't.
The day that I found out that my mom had planned to have an abortion was a really interesting day. I had a friend over, and we were all just joking and talking like we always do. And I can't remember exactly what the impetus was for her to say what she said, but she kind of, in a moment of just, blurted out, well, you almost weren't here. And I had never heard this before, and so I remember being like, what do you mean I almost wasn't here? And she was like, well, I was going to abort you. And so matter of fact, actually, that I thought it was still in the realm of the joke that we had been, teasing or talking about. And I could tell that it was really uncomfortable for my friend who was there. And I remember after she left asking about it. And I think at that point, I don't think my mom intended to say that day. But I remember asking again to get confirmation. Was that true? What you said, and what was that about? And at that point, she didn't really want to talk about it anymore. And so I kind of walked away with a lot of unanswered questions about how this situation really played out. And I think shortly after that, in a very similar way, my aunt was talking to me on the phone, and they had some concerns about where my life was at that point. And so she was talking to me, and she also blurted out the fact that my father was married when my mom got pregnant with me. She had no idea that I did not know about this. And when my response was emphatic and very surprised, she immediately regretted what she had said. And actually, I remember her, saying, "Please tell me you knew this. Please tell me you knew this. Please tell me you knew this." And I was like, I had no idea. And at that point, she hung up the phone. So again, very close in time, the period of time that I found out both of these things. And just in such abrupt ways. It was a lot to handle, and I had so many unanswered questions because, again, no one really wanted to speak about it. No one really wanted to talk about it. And up until this point, I knew that that there was tension surrounding my dad. I knew that that my family didn't like him very much, and I always thought that it was just because they weren't married at the time that my mom got pregnant with me. I always thought that was the reason why. And after that, because he wasn't in my life, I always thought that was the reason why there was so much contention as it related to him. But I had no idea that there was this whole underlying sub-story surrounding my birth that, I was completely oblivious to and unaware of.
On the day that he appeared at my car, when I was scheduled to have the abortion, I was shocked. I was angry at my friend, of course, for betraying my confidence. And I listened to him as he said, "I'm getting a divorce. We're going to be married, and we're going to raise our child together." And to me, that was like, oh, well, maybe there can be a happy ending to this. So I actually left with him, and we sat, and I cried, and he promised, and I listened and believed, all to be in vain.
When I discovered that everyone in my family knew that there was this underlying story about me, I felt a lot of things. I was angry. I was hurt. I had a lot of questions, and I felt like I wasn't getting the answers that I needed. It started to make sense. The relationship that I had with my mom up until that point started to make sense. We didn't have the best relationship at that point, and so I could understand why. Here comes this kid and this point in your life that you were not ready and not wanting, at that particular time and place. And so it made sense. The way we interacted, the way that we were, started to make sense to me. I still had so many questions, though. And I think I had already, because of knowing that my father had actually denied me, I think we take for granted how smart and observant and discerning children are. And so when we left the courtroom the day that he denied paternity and had the test results altered, I remember looking up at my mom and her saying and asking her, did we win? And her looking down at me and saying, yeah, we did. But I knew we didn't. I heard the judge say paternity denied, and I heard him reveal the test results. I knew that, I was a kid, I was young, but I was not stupid, And so I walked away from that with a lot of resentment and a lot of abandonment issues, I think. And I honestly, a lot of what I carried, I didn't even process at the time that I had been carrying it. And I think it started even before I was aware of what was happening. And I think it gives credence to a lot of people's research or theories or belief that in vitro a child knows, or is aware of what's happening, what emotions are taking place with the mom and all of that, because I think that I carried a lot of that, even not fully aware of what it all meant. So, I think that for me, I was struggling with a lot that I did not fully know how to process or didn't even realize that I was carrying. And I think for me, because, I was a really smart kid, and I just attempted to numb myself of the situation and to just move on. And I remember my mom asking me, do you miss your dad? No. Do you want to see your dad? Nope. Just really no outward expression of emotions ever about it. And it wasn't until, a bit after finding out all of this that I realized the impact and the effect that it had on me. And it was only because I saw the impact in other relationships in my life. I remember being in an argument with one of my friends, and out of my mouth, just in the heat of the moment, saying, well, you're not going to be like my dad. You're not just going to come and go in my life as you please. And I said it, and after I said it, I realized, okay, you got some stuff. You have some stuff that you've been carrying and that you've been not dealing with that has manifested in, other scenarios in your life. And that was the very first time ever that I knew that I needed to process.
My daughter's father was there for me during the pregnancy. He was there during the first 3 or 4 years of her life. Wholeheartedly. I decided that I did not want to be married to him. He was not the person that I wanted to have for my husband and for my mate for the rest of my life. He wanted to get married. He did get a divorce and he wanted to get married, but I didn't. And as soon as I decided that I definitely was not going to marry him, he gave me an ultimatum. It was either marry him or he would never take care of her again. I chose, okay, you won't have to take care of her. I'll take you to court. And I did. I knew he was the father. There was no ands, if, and buts about it. So I was willing to go to court, ready to go to court. But the court system failed me because he had the resources to pay an attorney, to pay off a judge, and to falsify the results. The next day was very strange. I woke up and I'm saying to myself, this has got to be a dream. I'm going to wake up and they're going to have the real results. They're going to call me at some point and say, I'm sorry, we made a mistake and we had someone else's results, and here are your results, and here's the father. He is the father of your daughter. And that day never came. It was devastating. And that was when I decided that she would never know. My daughter was never going to know anything about her father. No more than what she already knew ahead of time, the little memory that she had of him for the 3-4 years of her life. She was never going to know anything else. And I didn't realize she actually heard and experienced the results. I never even thought that she knew what was going on.
So I always knew that I was loved, and although I had suppressed and carried feelings of abandonment and being unloved and unwanted, I understand now that those were the lies that the enemy planted. Those were the lies that he wanted me to believe in order to destroy me, in order to keep me from the plan that God had or has for my life. So there was always, I think, on the forefront, just a lot of love and a sense from my family that, there was nothing I could do that was wrong. Because my grandparents were, what would you say? They
spoiled you.
Well, that, yes. They did spoil me, and my great-grandparents. Yes. I was the first grandchild, so even with the crazy circumstances surrounding me being here, everybody was, I think, glad once I was here, and I was the very first one, so I got showers of blessings.
I watched my daughter with the struggle of this news that she has carried for a very long time. And I actually read her first CD cover where she talked about wanting to end her life. And that was a very painful day for me. It was a painful experience, and I don't think I ever shared it with her. And I felt it was all my fault that she was going through this, that she had to go through this. But the day that the healing kicked in was at Panera, sitting down with Meka and Michelle, talking about this. That is when my healing started.
It is one of the tricks of the enemy to keep us bound in condemnation and bound to our fear and embarrassment and disillusionment. He wants us to carry our guilt and our shame. And I am so grateful that in all of this, there's freedom and liberty in Christ. And I never realized, although this is both of our stories. I could only process what I was going through. I could only process what I felt because I didn't know what you felt or what you experienced or what you were going through. But I understand and realize now that as much as I carried abandonment and shame, you carried condemnation and guilt and shame. And I'm grateful to God that on this day that you don't have to carry that anymore. You don't have to be weighed down by what you feel like you did wrong or what happened that wasn't righteous or upright. All of that is covered and has always been covered by the blood of Jesus. And I'm thankful that we can grow. Our relationship can grow from this, and that we can walk in freedom and in healing together. I don't think you ever get to a place where, life doesn't happen to you unless you're not here any longer.
Right.
So we're always going to be impacted by this. It's a part of who we are. It's a part of our story. It's a part of everything that has made us who we are. And I look at you and I don't see someone who failed. I see someone who persevered. I see a woman who is so strong that it helped me to be strong. It showed me how to be strong, how to get over things real quick, how to keep it moving, how to be bold and how to be confident. And a lot of people don't understand where that comes from in me, but I know that it comes from you. And so I don't see someone who was weak and looked for a way out. I see someone who stood in the face of the hand that they were dealt. And I think I can say the same about myself. The chips fell where they did, and God and our family picked up the pieces, and I've been able to walk in that strength, and I've been able to grow in that strength, and I've become the woman of God that I am because of all of this. I wouldn't be who I am if none of this happened. I wouldn't be who I am if I had not found out. I wouldn't have survived the way that I survived had I not had all of this not been revealed. And yeah, there were some dark moments. And yeah, there were some moments that I wish I were not here. There were some moments that I was angry at God because I felt like maybe that I was not wanted. And I experienced all of those emotions. But in the end of all of it, God in all of his sovereignty knew that we would be able to stand here. And as a result of this story, know that life would come out of that. There have been people who have not had abortions because I've shared this story. And when I think about that, I know that that's why you can't carry that guilt anymore. That's why you can't carry that condemnation anymore, because life has been birthed out of this story. Not just our lives, but the lives of others who have been impacted by it. And so I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not embarrassed by it. In fact, as many times as I'm allowed to share it, I will share it because I understand the weight of the responsibility that comes with it, that comes with us not only sharing the gospel of Christ, but also sharing the word of our testimony. And so I'm thankful to God that he chose you. And I'm thankful to God that he allowed you to make the choices and the decisions that you made so that I could grow up in the knowledge of him and so that we could be at this place now. I love you.
I chose my career after working with the Orange County Sheriff's Office for about 14 years. I often saw other victim advocates, and I knew that what they did was my passion. So after 20 years of graduating high school, I went back to college. I did not have a college degree because I had a child at a very young age, but I made the sacrifice to go back to college, go to college, not back to college, to go to college to get the degree that I needed to get in order to become a victim advocate. It did come with some stresses and some strains. I ended up resigning from the Orange County Sheriff's Office because I wanted this so bad, and I needed to go to school full time because I did not have a degree at all. So I went to 2 colleges at one time. I went to Valencia Community College, and I also went to Columbia College. And it took me about 2.5 years, but with the help of God and a lot of support from family, I was able to do it. Well, when I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology from Columbia College in 2007, in July, I graduated, and opening came available in August of 2007, where a victim advocate no longer wanted to do that job. And of course, I put in for it. And I was able to get rehired with the Sheriff's Office again, and I got the job. I have always had a passion for helping others, and many people often ask me, how do you do the job that you do? It gives me joy to be there for others when they are in a time of crisis, when they're in a time of need, because I know that there is something inside of me that can give them just a gleam, just a little bit of hope, even though they're going through what they're going through. It is nothing for me to see 7 to 8 people who are deceased in a week, and I am there to give moral support to their families, and also to lead their families to their next steps as to what they have to do, as to making preparations for their loved ones, for their burials, and also for the days ahead. So basically, the survivors that I come in contact with, I am in contact with them from the start and for years as they go through the crisis that they have been engaged in. What I do to keep my mental space clean is I prepare ahead of time. I spend a lot of time doing things that I like to do, which is I love to go to the beach. I spend a lot of time burning candles. I spend a lot of time in quiet place and spending time with my Father, my Heavenly Father. So I prepare ahead of time daily so that I am built up for what it is and for the job that I have to do on a daily basis. I don't wait until a crisis happens. I build myself up for crisis daily. I encourage myself on a daily basis, and this is what keeps me having a sane mind. With all of the experiences that I've had in life, I learned that it's important for you to strive for your goals and for your dreams. After graduating college, I was also able to be ordained as a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And I am now a pastor. I serve a local congregation here in the city of Altamont Springs. But also on a daily basis, I empower, motivate, and encourage women. In 2000, I launched a dream, Diva Sisterhood, Inc. And for 15 years, I have been encouraging and empowering women. I do this by way of women's conferences, workshops, mentor sessions, and many things just to uplift and encourage women on a daily basis, that they too can strive for their goals and they need to reach for the stars. My goal in life is to let people know that continue to reach for your dreams, even when something challenging and difficult happens in your life. Don't allow that to stop you from continuing to reach for your dreams, your goals, and to reach for the stars. I want you to know that with God, all things are possible.
I spent 10 years in the military as a naval intelligence officer. I got out to go to law school. I would have probably stayed in the military had I been able to be a naval lawyer. But because I was intelligence, they spend a lot of money on your schooling, so they don't let you laterally transfer. So to stay in the military, I would have had to have continued to be a naval intelligence officer, which was great, but I always had a passion to be a civil rights advocate. After law school, I opened up a law firm in my hometown, which is really great, but it was a small hometown. My partner and I, we were doing pretty well there, but like most people, we thought the grass was greener to move to a bigger city, which would have been Orlando. We started out in Sanford. With that, we sold our building in Sanford and we moved to the big city. In the move to the big city, we rented from a person who ended up being investigated by IRS. The building got seized. All our stuff got seized. We lost all our money. We didn't have a place to practice. My partner ended up going back home to Miami, and our dream kind of fell apart. Well, I'm a big advocate of being silent in a moment when you don't know what to do. So sometimes when you don't know what to do, you just say, "Peace, be still," and you just figure it out. So what I did after the dream fell apart, I actually took the money that I had and went on vacation and just thought about stuff and thought about where I was going to go, what I was going to do next. I prayed for guidance and leadership. When I came back, I was pretty much out of money. I had to figure out what to do. A friend of mine offered me a job with his law firm. Once I went to his law firm, within the first month of that law firm, I got the biggest case of my career so far. It was a plane crash. And during that time, we were doing personal injury. So that plane crash, I actually represented the person who died in that plane crash was my old paralegal. And so I represented her husband and her daughter in the case. It ended up settling for 8 figures. So it allowed me to start the law firm that I have now, which is the Women's Trial Group, the money from that case. And more importantly, it allowed me to make sure that her little girl, who was 4 years old at the time, was taken care of for the rest of her life. So I think that was the blessing, and kind of just being still and just letting God guide you. I think having that big case where we made a lot of money was a blessing, because it made me realize that really money isn't everything. I didn't feel different once I had money. I thought, coming from a place where, I never really had a lot of money, I thought once I got money, it would make you feel different or whatever. But then I realized that it doesn't. So from there, I think it was a freedom and a release to be able to say, when in my business, I'm going to do what just feels good and what makes me happy. So now with the Women's Trial Group, we take a lot of cases that don't make money. Our clients don't have money. But we do have to take some cases that make money just to keep the doors open. But the reward comes from helping people. And I think that is that's the blessing, and that's what makes you want to do it. The best cases that I have and the best time of my life in business is when we're doing a case that I feel so passionately about, and when we see the results that we want from that case. Working on Trayvon Martin, I think, was a bittersweet blessing. Of course, it didn't have the outcome that we wanted. We represented the family. We represented Tracy and Sabrina, who were his parents. But in not having the outcome that we wanted, there was a blessing there too, because Sabrina and Tracy, as you know, they've gone on for the last 4 years and have been huge advocates for parents against senseless violence. And I think with that, I had the blessing of working with Ben Crump and working with Sabrina, Tracy, all the people that were involved in that. And we've become a family. So we're all still involved in the Trayvon Martin Foundation. We all still support each other. And so I think, once again, when we're talking about overcoming stuff or not, sometimes you don't get what you want, you get something greater. And I think, as far as the verdict, we didn't get what we wanted on the verdict. But I think the advocacy and the lives that Sabrina touches and Tracy touches and Ben touches and I touch, I think that's much greater. That's a greater gift than the verdict would have been. I believe in living a life of gratitude, because I look around me and I see that, even when I'm down, I can just look around and see the situation of other people. I can see the homeless man on the street. I can see the person who has a mental illness that no one knows about, that becomes drug dependent, or all of those other issues. I see the child who doesn't have a parent that loves them. And I just think about the blessings that I have, because I have all of that. I have parents who love me. I have a roof over my head. I have, food to eat. And I think there's just blessing in that. When I turn on the water, it's amazing that we can turn on our water in a sink and we've got fresh, clean water. I think that is hugely amazing when you've been to other countries. And because I was in the military, I've been to other countries and I've seen, children. And I'm talking, preschool kids who live on the street and have no one to take care of them. So I think a part of surviving your angst, and everyone's angst it's valid. So I would not try to downplay anyone and how they feel, because everyone's feeling, no matter who you are, rich, poor, whatever, your feelings are valid. But in surviving that angst, I think that sometimes just be still and take an inventory of everything that you have. And I promise you, if you do that, you'll find that you have more than a lot of other people. The keys to my success has been being still in moments of chaos, evaluating all the blessings that I have in life, even when I feel like I don't have any, and looking at it and thinking, wow, I have more than I ever thought that I would ever have, and then moving from there.